Danny, so tell us, what is mastering?
Well, mastering is the final stage of the creative process where an artist or a label will give you the final mix of a track, and we basically use equalization, dynamic compression, limiting, to basically make sure that that track sits well and translates on all systems and is ready for a commercial release.
What's the difference between mixing as opposed to mastering?
When you're mixing a record, you're making sure all the volumes, EQs and other effects like reverbs or delays and all that kind of, they all relate to each other and it all comes together as a final mix. So you're working on individual channels as opposed to mastering is just working on the final mix. Once you've mixed your record, then you end up with just a stereo bounce of that file, and that's what we master.
So what are the main processes or tools that you use for mastering?
The main tools we use are either digital plugins or outboard gear, and basically EQs, compressors, limiters, that kind of thing, to change up what we need to make things right in the mix.
And is it something that someone could do themselves? Should someone master their own tracks?
Well, you could do it yourself. I mean, it depends what kind of quality mastering you're looking for. If you're looking for a commercial, proper release, and it's not something that you'd probably do yourself. You'd probably send it to someone that knows what they're doing. But in saying that, if you don't have a budget, then you can always do it yourself. But there's a lot of factors involved in that. You need to be in the right environment when you're mastering. You need to have the right equipment and the right gear. So in saying that, I think that's probably a good reason to send it to someone else. And the other reason, of course, is just having another set of ears on your project is always good.
You've mentioned a few factors that are involved with mastering, like the equipment used, the engineer, and the room. What would you say is the most important?
I think the most important factor would be the engineer first. It's the ears behind the music first. Then the room would be probably second. The monitors would probably be third. And then the gear, I'd say the gear is the last factor in that chain. You can only make your product as good as the environment you're using to do it in.
And what kind of price range can people expect to pay for mastering?
Mastering varies, depends on who you go to. You know, the reputation of that certain engineer or the certain mastering house that you go to can start from $50 or you could pay $200. It depends on the mastering engineer, how much time, what kind of gear that they use. I guess splits up whether you spend $50 or $200.
So what would be the main difference between cheap and expensive mastering?
There's no such thing as cheap mastering. Cheap mastering is for people that don't know what's going on. Do you know what I mean? Cheap mastering is when you get engineers that are just setting up their websites and going, here, I'm a mastering engineer, send me your track for $20. Whereas if you actually spend the money and go to an engineer that really knows what he's doing, you know, you're going to get quality results at the end of the day. You know, running through proper gear, good set of ears, a good room. That's the difference between cheap and nasty and something professional.
So who puts up the money? Who pays for mastering?
Usually the label pays, but I'm seeing more and more these days that the artists are paying for mastering because they're either putting it out themselves or that they want to present the most polished demo they can to a record label, so they've got a better chance of actually getting a deal.
So if an artist wants to get their track mastered, what do they need to give you? How do they prepare a track for mastering?
Well, basically, they bounce it or export it out of the program that they're using, whether it's Logic or Ableton or Pro Tools or whatever, and to give me a 44.1 24-bit file with no compression or limiter on the master would be perfect. Anything above that, 48, 96K, at 24-bit is perfect.
And is there a favourite style of music that you prefer to master?
I don't actually prefer any kind of style. For me, it's the quality of the mix. The better the mix comes to me, the better I can do my job. So, but in saying that, also it's a challenge to work on a mix that isn't so good. And I think that's what kind of separates a good engineer from a bad engineer.